Hey, welcome back, everybody, and Simply Cyber community members, to another episode of Simply Cyber Live, the 1 hour long form live stream cyber guest interview experience every single Thursday. And we've got a banger for you today. I'm super, super happy to be holding a fireside chat with a truly inspiring figure in the cyber and content creation world. For those of you who haven't crossed paths with her online yet, let me introduce Sandra Liu, who's also known as With Sandra on YouTube and with love.sandra on Instagram. Great Instagram account as well. And Sandra's not your typical cyber expert. She's a passionate content creator, a career mentor, and an advocate for diversity in tech, especially for women and underrepresented groups. Sandra's YouTube channel boasts over 86,000 subscribers and has a wealth of educational content on information security, career development, and even life advice. But her journey wasn't always about creating content. She's got a very strong background in InfoSec, having worked as an analyst at both Stack Overflow and Bank of America. So I definitely want to talk to her about working in financial services. You guys know my background there. And it's just super stressful. But today we'll be discussing Sandra's fascinating career path, exploring her unique approach to cybersecurity education, and uncovering some valuable insights and personal tips for all of us navigating the cybersecurity industry, right? Like how to, which certs or which direction or SOC or pen test, like whatever. All those things and more we're going to get in. So settle in, friends, because this is going to be a fireside chat unlike any other that we've had on the show. As always, I am strong advocate and encourage engagement for all of you in chat to be part of this show. So if you have a question for Sandra, don't be shy. Drop them in chat. Put a capital Q at the beginning so I know that it's a question for Sandra, not stream chat. But I'll pull them on stage, ask Sandra, and do all of that. As always, it's great to see some regulars in here. I see a lot of hashtag Team SC people. Dan Reardon over on LinkedIn, Muhammad, Nobody, Sean Riley, our very own Jesse Johnson, got some mod love in chat. This is great. We've got a really good one. Do me a favor, if you're a squad member, drop your Oprah emotes. We'll introduce Sandra to the Oprah emote if you've got them. And all, please welcome as we bring in Sandra Liu. Hey, Sandra, how's it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Awesome. I'm awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think we're going to have a great experience. Was that intro fairly accurate? Hopefully I didn't misrepresent anything. Did I get it right?
Honestly, I think that's the first time I've been introduced that awesomely. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, awesome. Fantastic. And here's all the Oprah emotes rolling in. If you're watching on YouTube, you can definitely see them. That is the supportive, inclusive, like you get some love, Oprah emote. So that's awesome. So Sandra, where to start? There's so much with you. You've been doing a lot of people, when I told the community that you were coming on stream, a lot of people were like, I love Sandra. Like, yeah, Sandra. So like, mad love for you. So before we get into like your cybersecurity career, you have been doing content creation. Interestingly enough, fun fact for those, I started Simply Cyber in December of 2019, and you started with Sandra in November of 19. And we've had very similar, I guess, YouTube career journeys. I guess what kind of inspired you? Like, I know why I started my channel. Why did you start your channel? And is it still aligned with what you're doing today?
Yeah, so in November 2019, I actually graduated college, May 2019. And then I was just working full time. And by then I was in the New York City area. So I didn't really have any friends. I didn't really, do very much. So I kind of wanted to work on something outside of work that could have been like a passion project. And in college, I did a lot of volunteer work with a organization called Tech Girls. So, and they basically just taught middle school girls how to code. And that was something I'd always been interested in. And then when I started my YouTube channel, originally it was just to make videos. Honestly, I was always curious about making videos on YouTube. I watched a lot of YouTube growing up, as probably most people growing up nowadays. But yeah, I'd always been kind of interested in it, never took action on it. And then by then, I had a little bit of free time since I was in a new city, didn't really do very much outside of work. So I decided to go for it. And then I was just making videos on like vlogs, whatever I was doing. I don't know. It was just random videos. I probably deleted most of them now. But yeah, don't go looking for them, please. But I ended up making a video on how I started my career in cybersecurity. And I didn't think that video would do very well, but at the time I was just making whatever I wanted to do. And that ended up getting, I think, like 4,000 views, which isn't a crazy amount, but at the time my channel was like less than 1,000 subscribers. So it was a lot to me. And
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, well, I'm getting questions on, what kinds of certs did I have? And like questions about people interviewing, or questions from people asking how I like prepared for my interviews. So I started making more cybersecurity videos, and I noticed those were doing pretty well. And then 4 years later, here I am.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, I mean, as far as like your content, do you find yourself mostly making content that's in response to questions you're getting, or are you making content around like, current trends or like, oh, log4j drop, like let's do something on that?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of a mix of both, but sometimes I'll see a question in my comment and I'll be like, huh, do I have a video on that? And if it's interesting enough, then I'll probably make it.
Mhm.
But it's just sometimes my video backlog is a bit long because I'll get video ideas and I'll have like 20, 30 video ideas in my backlog. And then I say I'll get to them, but then I just get more ideas that take up the place of
Oh
them.
my God, yeah.
It's a mix of both, but I think I did make a video on the Log4j thing and a few other, like, hacks in the past, but it really depends on, like, maybe I got, like, really inspired by one specific hack because we were also talking about it at work at the time, and I was, like, doing some digging into it, and I was like, "Wow, I should make a video on this." So that's usually what inspires those kinds of, like, timely videos, but,
Mhm.
oftentimes it's, like, answering general security questions, or if someone asks me to do a review on a certain program, I really like doing reviews, so I think that's another one.
Oh, I love that. So when you say reviews, like, are you reviewing like software? Are you reviewing
Mm,
resumes and profiles? Like, what kind of review videos are you doing?
right. So I review a lot of like courses, boot camps, and online learning programs, basically. Like a lot of resources online, I'll do reviews on. Sometimes it's like a list of like 4 to 5, or sometimes it's just like a deep dive into one specifically. And I'll also like compare and contrast like the Microsoft cert versus the Google cert on Coursera or something. So stuff
Oh,
like that.
cool. Yeah, that is actually quite valuable. Maybe maybe I'll give you access to the course I just launched and have you
Oh,
do an honest review. I won't even so many.
yeah.
Let me ask you this: when you do review videos, right? Because obviously I get reached out to review videos. Um, do you ever get where they're like, "Hey, we'd like you to review this, but we want to see it first because if it's a negative review, we don't want."
Oh.
Like, how do you deal with those type of conversations?
So I try to be as honest as possible, and if I say that this like a specific course doesn't have a certain area that I think maybe it should have, I will say that. I don't think any company has been like, "Oh, please take down this review because, it's a negative or, like,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
as good." But, yeah, I usually just, like, try to, like, speak on, like, the highlights, and then maybe if there are some things that are missing, I'll call that out. But, I'm usually not bashing them because if a program isn't good in the first place, then I probably wouldn't review it anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Hey, what's up, Base Case? Dropping a squad membership. This guy, 26 months. I think he was Base Case is the official first squad member. So you know how YouTube does memberships, like we call
Yeah.
it a squad. So we have a sound effect for Mr. Base Case, the old anime wow. So Sandra, as far as like you had mentioned having a backlog of content and stuff, I feel like a lot of people talk about content creation and but if you don't do it, there's a lot of challenges associated with that. What are some challenges that you've encountered with developing content? And we could talk YouTube, but I also want to highlight your Instagram account since you really are quite active over there as well. So either or, I'd be curious.
Yeah, so I think nowadays, so before I started this YouTube channel in 2019. I did my full-time job, and YouTube, both at the same time until last July. So it's been about 4 years of me doing this at the same time, and it really felt like I was working 2 full-time jobs at the time. So now that I'm doing, by the way, I don't know if the audience knows, but I'm currently doing content creation full-time, mostly cybersecurity content, and nowadays it feels like I have all the time in the world because I've kind of gone through like the 80, 100-hour weeks, combining both of them. And now it feels like every day is kind of like play. So I don't have too much to complain about nowadays, but I do think that a lot of the issues I had in the past were around timing. So like balancing both your 9 to 5 as well as, of course, all the constraints that come with it. If you're on call, if you have like to do overtime hours when it's busy season, if it's the end of the quarter, there's a lot of things you got to get done just for like QBRs and like presentations. These are not things I do anymore. So yeah, honestly, I do think that content creation does have like its downsides. For example, if I'm like trying to time things correctly, but for the most part, I really enjoy it.
I love it. I'm going to actually drop a link in chat right now to Sandra's YouTube channel. Here, I'll pull it up. So this is Sandra's YouTube channel, Tech and Lifestyle. But even though it says Tech and Lifestyle, would you say that most of your content on YouTube is focused on cybersecurity specifically?
Yeah, so I made this name way back when I was still doing like work vlogs, but I was also doing some like travel vlogs, like PTO vlogs. So I would also put them on this channel, and that's why I named it that. But nowadays, it's really only cybersecurity. Oh, and I also plan on starting to talk a little bit more about taking a sabbatical, since right now the career break that I'm doing to work on YouTube full time is a 1-year sabbatical. So eventually I will be going back to the workforce. But for now, I'm just kind of doing my thing on YouTube. And yeah, I do think Tech and Lifestyle is a little bit of a dated name on my channel.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess you can always adjust that a little bit, since you've made it really about Sandra the individual, right? So you can kind of like, I don't know, like I got one foot in both sides, right? It's like Gerald Auger, Simply Cyber. So it says Simply Cyber all over everything, but my name is kind of smooshed in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see the questions coming in chat. Like, keep the questions. I love it. It's awesome. Let's just throw one in here. Anyways, from Miss Kimberly Can Fix It. Do you have any help with your channel, like volunteers or mods to help you create content? Great question, Kimberly.
Yeah, that is a very good question. So I used to do everything myself, but in November of last year, I actually hired on an editor, and they have been a huge help. I used to post 2 videos a week, so about 8 to 9 videos a month, and even during like when I was working full time, and then I eventually realized that I could probably do 1 video a week and make it like a little bit more quality. And also hiring on an editor also removed some time restraints for me. And I also have a virtual assistant who helps me with some of the admin stuff. So mostly emails, honestly. I still review like contracts myself. And I also recently got an accountant, which is very important if you're doing a lot of this yourself.
Yeah.
Small businesses definitely get an accountant. That's been really helpful. And I am considering hiring a kind of like a technical writing intern. So that's something I'm currently looking for right now.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, if you're interested, message at Sandra on that. So no, that's all awesome. And I hear you 100%, especially the bookkeeping side. I was literally just I got interviewed on Josh Mason's podcast earlier today, actually. And he asked me the question because I'm essentially a single employee company. I do have, my family is on staff and they do things, but for like content and streaming and all that, that's me. So, and he asked me the question, would you ever hire staff, right? Like if you look at someone like Heath Adams over at TCM Academy, he has like 50 employees now and he's just like going to the moon. And I was like, it's really, when you think about running a business, which essentially is what we're doing now, right? As self-employed people, like the technical stuff, the content stuff, that's the easy part, but there's like an entire business to administer with taxes and payroll and contracts and lead gen and dev and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh my God, especially the accounting, because you really don't want to get that wrong with taxes and, IRS and all that stuff. So 100% agree. That's a really good choice.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I'm most nervous about, the business side, because I obviously am not an accountant. So yeah, it's been really nice having someone do that kind of that side of the work, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. So I mentioned Sandra's YouTube channel. Now I'm going to bring up Sandra's Instagram channel. And this right here, I'm not logged in. I tried to log in beforehand and Instagram said it was going to message me a 6-digit PIN, but I never received it. So I'm not quite sure what all is going on with that. But this is Sandra's Instagram channel. Now, I bring it up for 2 reasons. One, Sandra, you're very, like, you have 129,000 subs on Instagram, larger than YouTube. So obviously you're putting a lot of work in on on the gram, right? If I might be too old to say it that way, Andre, obviously, honestly, Sandra, I probably shouldn't even have said that, the gram. But I had a question about this. Is the Instagram account, is that more your individual and it's like personal and it looks like there's some travel pictures in here, or is it also just
Mm,
another outlet for Sandra tech and lifestyle?
Great question. That is something I am still trying to figure out.
Mhm.
So originally, this Instagram was my personal account, and then I started posting a bit more on there. It was mostly travel, and I this was around when I was graduating college, so also around the 2018-2019 timeframe.
Mhm.
And then I just started posting for fun. It actually was the first platform I was able to monetize before I had a YouTube channel. So I guess that's another interesting point. But nowadays, I kind of just use it as a video dump, honestly. So I'm trying to incorporate some of my cybersecurity and tech stuff onto my Instagram, but I also keep some of the travel stuff since that's another one of my personal hobbies. I really like to travel. Last year, we did a 4-month road trip across the US while we were working remotely. This was before I quit my job. So it
Yep.
was definitely so stressful, but we took some PTO in between when we were in dead spots with no Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then this year we also have some travel coming up as well. So yeah, I would say it's kind of like a mix of both of my worlds combined, I guess.
All right. Well, I mean, if you're enjoying this conversation with Sandra, her Instagram is just like another vehicle for her to communicate outward. So if you like that, then you'll like her Instagram. We did have a question in chat. Now, so people who are here because they know Sandra and you're just getting to know me, you may not know this, but standard Simply Cyber members know this. I am awful at Instagram. In fact, when Sandra and I spoke for the first time for like an hour and a half, I think 30 minutes was just her trying to like coach me up on Instagram and like inspire me to try. But I've just accepted it. I'm terrible. But we had a question in chat. I'm gonna find it when I am done asking you. But YouTube, you can create a YouTube channel. We tell people all the time trying to break in, you need to network, portfolio, have things to point to, demonstrate your expertise, volunteer,
Mhm.
etc. And YouTube's a great way to do that. YouTube is probably the hardest lift of all the social platforms, if I had to, be real. But it'll work. I can't speak to Instagram, so I don't know. From your perspective, how is Instagram as a platform for individuals to demonstrate expertise or demonstrate capability within cybersecurity, like basically to leverage it as a way to demonstrate themselves?
Right. So I do think that Instagram is still primarily seen as a social media network compared to platforms like YouTube, or maybe you write articles on Medium or even Twitter. I feel like sometimes a little bit more, or X, I guess, LinkedIn. Like the ones that are more text based are usually the ones that are more better catered towards, I guess, working and like professional careers.
Mhm.
But Instagram, the only people that I know who use Instagram successfully, who also get a lot out of it, are content creators in the tech space. So I wouldn't say that Instagram would be the best medium if you're looking to like show your project portfolios. But I will say that if you also plan on, having a hobby or maybe like a potential future career in content creation, and you have that tech niche, I think that's something that is really interesting to a lot of people. And I follow a lot of tech creators on Instagram and YouTube, and like some of them just do walkthroughs on Instagram.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're like very memey. Like there's a lot of tech meme pages on Instagram that do really well, but obviously they're not as technical, and you may not show that to a recruiter most likely, or maybe you would. I don't know, but yeah, I do think it's a little bit different, but I would still consider that something something you can consider if you're trying to have fun with it. But if you're mostly looking on like project portfolio side, probably sticking to LinkedIn or YouTube or Medium articles would probably be a better option.
All right. It almost sounds like Instagram is like an opportunity to leverage something else, almost like
Mhm.
adjacent or tangential to like something bigger that you're already doing,
Yes.
like you said, YouTube and such. All right. Well, great question. We got a lot of good questions coming in here now. Dan Reardon's. So basically, Chad has entered the chat, and they are now taking over the stream. How have you fought off imposter syndrome or common haters, both in professional industry as a cyber practitioner, but also on the social media side?
Mhm. That is a really good question. So I guess in terms of imposter syndrome, I felt this the most when I was the earliest in my career. At the time, I was in a cybersecurity rotational program, so I was doing 3 rotations, and we switched every year. So I was working at the company for 3 years. This was at Bank of America, so a fintech company, a finance company. If you guys can draw some conclusions from that, but I do think overall it was a positive experience. But I also feel like because I was switching so often, the learning curve is there. And then since I'm also freshly learning a lot of these concepts, and at the time I was also studying for my Security Plus, this was probably the part of my career where I was dealing with the most imposter syndrome. I also wasn't the best at public speaking, which I still am not very much good at public speaking. But I do think that over time it got better. And I guess practice makes perfect is the best answer here. Even though I'm still not the most confident in, my tech chops or being able to like speak well on a panel or a presentation, I do think that's gone a lot better compared to 4 or 5 years ago when I was just starting out. And even during my first internship, this was in software engineering. Since before I got into cybersecurity, I was in software engineering, and I was super quiet. My voice would be I just like kind of didn't talk. I still remember looking back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe they hired me because like at the time I was really just not talking during any of these like I don't know, panels and like discussions that we had, team meetings. But nowadays, yeah, I feel like the longer you're in your career, the better you have an understanding of the things around you. And also in my previous company, it was a much smaller team. So instead of thousands of people in cybersecurity team, we had less than 10 people, and I was a lot closer to my coworkers. And I think that makes the biggest difference as well, because if you have a team of supportive coworkers who you know that they have your back and you have their back, if there's a question that comes up during an interview or a question with a client, that gives you a lot of confidence boost compared to just like thinking like, oh, you have to deal with this, or like you have to face the consequences or deal with this problem yourself. So I think that made the biggest difference. Like other people, and like having that positive impact from most people. Obviously, were also more senior than me because I was the youngest on my team. So that gave me a big confidence boost as well. And then in terms of negative comments, I honestly I do take them to heart sometimes,
Yeah.
even nowadays. So I don't think anyone ever really gets 100% bulletproof against hate comments. And I mean, even just like if you're not online, I'm sure there are people that have gotten negative comments or nasty comments from other people in their lives. So it is kind of like unfortunately a universal human experience. But I think the biggest thing is every time you hear a piece of negative comment or even like criticism, I do think that filtering through that and deciding to yourself, hey, is this piece of criticism or negativity something something that I should take to heart? Is it something that would actually improve me as a person? Is it going to make me better if I like actually believe this or like take it in, internalize it? Am I going to like improve if I decide to take action on this somehow? And if it doesn't, then you should just weed it out. Like just forget about it. And I think that's really the only way. And over time, you're going to get a little bit better at that. But yeah, I don't think anyone can ever get 100%, unless maybe you're like David Goggins. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's still a work in progress overall.
Yeah, 100%. It's unfortunate that one negative comment can like live rent free in your head.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm 100% there with you on that one. Kind of switching gears, real quick hit here. We I do broadcast out to Twitch too. I think We're Hacking Live is currently the one person watching on Twitch on the channel. Thank you, We're Hacking Live.
Oh, wow.
I know you do YouTube and content creation and stuff. I know you don't do a lot of live streams, and that's basically what Twitch is. Are you giving consideration to incorporating live streams into your future content? By the way, for someone who doesn't like public speaking, I think you're doing phenomenal in this interview in front of 120 people right now. So you're crushing it.
Oh, thank you. So I do not stream on Twitch, but okay, so I think I told Jerry a lie at the beginning of the stream.
Okay.
But
The truth comes out.
yeah, I said that this is my first live stream, but actually I do remember back in like 2019, I've done a Twitch stream, and it was actually so I used to play MMORPGs growing up a lot,
Okay.
and I streamed this game from Nexon. It's called Mabinogi. Most of you guys might know Nexon for MapleStory. That's a very popular one. But I played that growing up, and I screamed it for like, I don't know, maybe like once or twice. It wasn't a very good stream, but I no longer stream. But maybe in the future, who knows? But yeah, I do have a Twitch channel somewhere out there, but I don't use it very much.
Well, that's good to know. You dabbled. You did dabble.
Yeah, I tried it.
So I got a follow-up question here. Just because you mentioned playing video games and enjoying that, to pair into this, Pierre wanted to know, how do you deal with burnout? This is a thing that a lot of people in our industry deal with, especially people who are working two jobs, content creation and 9 to 5 practitioner, like you said you were doing before. What's your approach for personally dealing with burnout, and what might you give as guidance to others?
Yeah. So I feel like for burnout, there's kind of like two main phases, I guess. Obviously, I'm not a scientist or anything, but I think in the beginning, it kind of starts off pretty slow. Like you kind of notice yourself feeling a bit more tired, or not as motivated to do things, or feeling anxious when you do certain things or having certain projects come up. And that's kind of like the beginning phase of burnout, I would say. And then eventually you get to a point where you kind of, I don't want to say drop the ball, but I will say that it comes down to a point where you kind of have to value your health, whether it's personal, physical, mental. That is going to eventually have to come first. And for me personally, I do think that doing a lot more things in your everyday life that you enjoy, that kind of fill your cup rather than drain from your cup, which a lot of times that's work, that's your obligations, that's your everything that you have to do on a regular basis as a human. But you're gonna have to find, it could be hobbies, it could be like cooking healthy foods, it could be, for me it's traveling. So even when I was working, I was doing a lot of traveling. I mean, we did that road trip while I was still working full time, and that honestly added more stress to me though, which is
Oh
kind
my
of funny. But
God.
that's just because we were traveling full time and also working full time and YouTube full time, so it felt like I was just trying to enjoy it, but I couldn't very much. But I don't recommend that to everyone, by the way. But I do think that it's just finding the things that fill your cup. It could be 2 or 3 things that you do every day for yourself. I know for some people, it's like making a really nice cup of coffee in the morning. That's like, I talked to my cousin, for example, who really likes coffee, and like she has like this really fancy coffee machine that I, wouldn't even know how to use. And she spends a lot of time in the morning, like drawing her coffee latte art. And that's something that fills her cup. So I think it's finding as many of those things as possible and trying to incorporate them into your daily routine when you can.
There you go. So that's the approach for burnout. I love that answer. So let's we've been doing a lot with content creation, and it's phenomenal. And I will continue to drop links to Sandra's Instagram and YouTube channel as the conversation continues. But I do want to spend some time talking about your professional experience and your professional life, because obviously you are a cyber practitioner. Um, Suyu, I want to get this right. Suyukti wants to know, what was your experiences at Bank of America like, or in the banking industry in general, in work-life balance? And just before you answer, I did work in financial services for 3 months. I was there for 3 months, and I was like, no, like it almost destroyed my, I mean, I wasn't married to my wife at the time, but we were living together, about to be engaged. And she's like, you've got to quit that job. This is like very unhealthy. And so anyways, like, having said all that, what was your experience like in financial services? And what are your thoughts in relation to her question?
Right. So firstly, I do want to say that my first official experience in the banking industry was actually during my internship in college, I mentioned briefly, and that was at JP Morgan. And that one was a software engineering internship. So this was before I made the switch into cybersecurity. But overall, that was a pretty good experience. But obviously, we were doing an internship. So I think interns are just having a lot more fun than full-time employees. But um, yeah, Bank of America. So they were, personally, they were the first company who gave me a chance. So obviously, I do have good things to say about them. But I will say that I think it's because I was in a cybersecurity rotation program that made the biggest impact on my experience. So firstly, going into it, my manager and my team knows I'm only there for 1 year. So they're basically trying to teach me as much as I can, but then know that I'm not going to be staying on the team. So it's not like I'm being assigned the biggest projects. But I will say that I had a lot of managers specifically my first manager, who actually gave me a lot of autonomy in the projects I got to work on. So the first one, for example, I wanted to keep my coding skills because before I got into cybersecurity, I was a developer and I was working on this network security application while also working on some of the other cybersecurity program manager stuff, sorry, that she was working on. So I kind of got to see both sides, the technical side of cybersecurity as well as the non-technical side. So that was very interesting. And then my second team, I was mostly on a junior pen testing team. And
Okay,
another
that's
thing,
cool.
yeah, it was very cool. But I do think I was lucky in a way where actually none of the teams I was on had on-call rotations. So I think that makes the biggest difference when you're looking for a cybersecurity job. The level of stress multiplies depending on how many and how often you're on call. And in my last role, after fintech, I had some on-call hours, but they weren't as harsh as the 24-hour over the weekend. Even sometimes during PTO that you can hear horror stories about on Reddit and different forums. But at Bank of America, I didn't have that. And in my last role at the bank, I was in a GRC program. I was in GRC, so I know Jerry, you have a little
Yes, yes.
history with that.
Ring the bell, Sandra.
But I was on the internal auditing side. So I did a lot of governance stuff. I did a lot of just internal documentation. And even though that wasn't my favorite area of cybersecurity, I do think I learned a lot from it. And it also taught me a lot about the importance of documentation. So I would say overall, I had pretty good work-life balance at the bank.
Mhm.
But I also think, again, I could be biased because I was in a rotation program. So I want to give, as framed of an answer as possible without speaking on other people's experiences. But overall, I had a good time, and I would recommend it. But it is unfortunate to hear about your experience, Jerry. Although
Oh, yeah, no,
it sounds
it's
pretty
fine. It was just I was a database administrator
bad.
and a systems analyst kind of thing, and basically, if the program, like, basically, it was a solution that helped traders trade in real time, but they
Okay.
were, this was early 2000, so like kind of dot com boom era, a lot of the tech was getting pushed without QC QA, so it was like broken and brittle. And if something broke, I was the person who picked up the phone to help
Makes
them.
sense.
So I've got a person who's trying to like sell, or buy, and like minutes are
Mhm.
ticking away as I'm trying to like fix this problem for you, and they're just like screaming at me. Like the one thing I remember about it is I would come home and tell my girlfriend, my wife, uh, I feel like I feel like I was just in a boxing match for like 9 hours straight. And I was commuting from a suburb, taking the commuter rail into Boston, and back out. So that's like another 2.5 hours
Oh my
every day
god.
of like soul sucking exhaustion. Anyways, like I'm totally moved
Yeah.
on from it.
Okay. Yeah, mine was not that intense, but I do know on the trading side of the house, it's basically like that.
Yeah, had I
I
known,
wasn't
I wouldn't have done that for sure. So, anyways, yeah. So, if you're looking to break into the industry in financial services, which pays exceptionally well, you
That's
want to
fair.
do Sandra's path. Like, if you're at the fork of the road, you want to go towards Sandra, not towards me, because your experiences will be much better. Um, so continuing on with your career, Sandra, you said you were a software engineer, and had those, skills. But
Mhm.
why did you make the decision to move into cybersecurity?
Yeah, very good question. So when I started out in college, I was actually first a nursing major. Realized very quickly I did not like anything to do with like blood, hospitals, anything like that. So I quickly switched out. Even before it was during freshman orientation, I saw the classes, I saw what we were going to be doing, and I was like, all right, I got to switch my major, get me out of here.
Yeah.
And then I switched into computer science. And then at the time, I only switched into it because I heard from someone, hey, these majors make a lot of money, and I was like, okay, well, I want to find a job after I graduate, so I guess I'll major in this.
Money's good. Money helps things move. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I didn't know what else I wanted to major in, so that was another part of it. So this seemed like a safe bet, and then afterwards, I kind of went through that, ended up switching over to IT, and during this time, I flip-flopped between wanting to go into data science and then software engineering, or data science, and then software engineering, and then eventually when I graduated, cybersecurity. So data science was also because, hey, like I heard this major makes a lot of money, and it was also very popular. At the time when I was in college, 2015 to 2019, data science was like all anyone was talking about. Now
Yeah.
it's like AI, machine learning, but that was something I was doing like undergrad research studies in, and then I did like a data analytics externship. So I was like pretty much in that space, and then eventually I ended up applying. So JP Morgan, they come to my school to recruit, and I actually struck up a semi-ish, like I don't want to say mentorship because we didn't talk that much, but I had like a connection in JP who came to talk at Temple, which was my university, and I basically got her email and stayed in touch. And I applied to JP those 3 years, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. I didn't get it the first 2 years, but I got it the third year, and that was kind of like my dream job. At the time, it was called the Technology Analyst Program, which is TAP, and it's somewhat now it's called the Software Engineering Program. But essentially, we're like in a group of 4 interns, basically building an app from scratch, and that was something that I really enjoyed starting junior year. Before that, I didn't like coding. It wasn't until I took a C# class, which I know some people may not like C# very much. It's a little bit deprecated, but I personally really like C#, or I guess Java is a pretty similar. If you like Java, I feel like you should at least kind of like C#, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so from there, I ended up also TAing the C# class, and I was like, hey, coding is actually really cool, and now I'm like teaching it. So when you teach something, you kind of get better at it. So
Mhm.
the more you get better at something, the more you like it. And that's kind of how it was. But when I was in my senior year, I basically had my JP full-time offer, and then I was also applying to other jobs. I was pretty open for software engineering and data science roles or data analytics. But at the time, I went to a conference called the Grace Hopper Conference, and they had this Bank of America was there, and they had a booth. And the last day of the conference, I went up to talk to someone, and the hiring manager basically was like, "Oh, we're hiring for a cybersecurity rotation program." And I was like, "Interesting. I never considered a cybersecurity career. Like this wasn't something I thought of." So I ended up getting an offer, and then I kind of decided, okay, so I got the cybersecurity offer, and then I have the software engineering offer, and I feel like the cybersecurity one seems a little bit more interesting, and I felt like I could consider going back to software engineering if I wanted to, if I, grinded leak code and, practice interviewing coding questions. But I figured that I could always turn back if I really wanted to, but at least I wouldn't, regret like, oh, well, what if I really liked cybersecurity? So that was the main reason why I decided, you know what, let's just try out this rotation program, see how it goes. And if I really hate it, then I can go back to software engineering.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to have the backup plan, so it feels like really no risk taken. So one thing that you had mentioned, that's another like really important thing that I always hammer on is like networking and like professional networking and such. When you went to this job fair, right? You're like putting
Yeah.
yourself out there. Um, you're talking to the Bank of America people. Like, what had you done anything? Like, did you get a warm introduction to them through a network connection? Did you just stumble into them? Like, I'm kind of curious, Sandra at the job fair, what has she done within a networking capacity that may have helped you get that Bank of America gig?
Great question. Yeah, so I would say I think so Grace Hopper, the conference specifically, is kind of meant to be a giant career fair. They
Okay.
have speaking sessions, but the main thing that students go for, I would say, is the career fair. And there's hundreds of companies in that one kind of like auditorium area, I guess. But basically, you have people lining up. So I'm just painting the picture. You have like a booth. Sometimes it's like a really fancy booth, and then you have like maybe like 5 or 6 recruiters standing there, and then there's like lines in front of all of them, and you're kind of lining up as a student with other students there, holding your resume in hand, and waiting to talk to a recruiter. So this is a typical experience at a career fair, but I do think it's really important to do, even though it feels really like weirdly I don't know, like conveyor belt ish when you're there.
Yeah, it sounds like speed dating, or like
Exactly.
you've got like
That's
10
exactly how it
seconds to
feels.
show your wares. Like, oh, would you like to buy my produce? No, next
Yeah.
next produce.
Honestly, that's exactly how it feels sometimes. And when I was working at Bank of America, I also got to go to this career fair as a hiring manager, like as an interviewer. So
Mhm.
that was another experience that we can talk about. But yeah, so basically I'm in line, I wait to talk to my recruiter, I hand them my resume, and then I'm like, hi, my name is Sandra. I go to XYZ University, and I'm looking this is my experience, and then I'm looking for a software engineering internship or full time. And then they'll like look at your resume like really quickly, and then I guess they're just looking for like GPA, previous experience, certifications, anything that like really stands out, you know. And then they put like a sticker on your resume just to mark you depending on like what they think about you. I have no idea what the sticker means.
Oh,
You know,
okay,
sometimes
it's not like a
colors.
thumbs down emote, or like a, like something super
Right,
obvious.
right. It's kind of like that for them to keep track of. And then like if that person likes talking to you, which I guess I was lucky that the recruiter liked my resume, they'll pass you on to another recruiter, and this is like closer, like a more senior person, closer to the hiring manager, and then they'll talk to you and then potentially schedule you for an interview. So that's a great thing about a lot of conferences these days. They have on-site interviews, so you could talk to someone on Wednesday, and then have an on-site interview scheduled the next day, and then you can even leave with an offer in hand. And that is, yeah, so it's pretty crazy how fast these conferences go. Grace Hopper is only for women in tech, but Tapia conference is another popular one. And yeah, there's a lot of tech conferences out there, but yeah, I would recommend at least going to one if you're a student, just to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity. Also, again, I'm always like thinking about stuff. So again, I think it would be beneficial if you do go to a career fair, based on what Sandra just said. Like, yes, it's important to have like a portfolio and all these other things. Those are important, so definitely do that. But if you're going through the front door, essentially, instead of getting a job through networking, they call it an elevator pitch, but like basically like that objective statement at the top of your resume, you should have that memorized, or at least be able to say the high points. Because to Sandra's point, you get what? Like you probably get like 30 seconds
Yes.
to like tell them something, and then they'll probably ask you a few questions. But at that point, you've made your first impression, right? Like they're either asking you questions because they want to know more, because they're being polite and they don't want to just be like, red sticker next, you know what I mean? So
Right, exactly. And you really want to stand out, catch their attention in the first like 5 to 10 seconds, and they'll keep listening because they imagine going to a career fair like that. That career fair is like 9 to 5. That person has been standing there receiving hundreds of resumes,
Yeah.
and they might be going a little bit numb, like listening to people talking, but that's why you want to like catch them with the first sentence and like kind of have that be the hook, and make sure that they're like continuing to listen to your experience, like what you're looking for, stuff like that. So yes,
Yeah.
elevator pitch. Yes.
Yeah, definitely be good with that. Now, if you did hit them in the face with a fish, they would definitely remember you. But I don't know if that would go a long way towards getting the job. So you had mentioned data science was blowing up at the time.
Mhm.
Now it's AI. I kind of wanted your thoughts. Jupiter 1000X Ice here basically has wait, that's the wrong question. I'm sorry. Basically says, do you think AI will replace analysts with all layoffs? So I feel like this is why I don't know why the question's not showing up here. So thanks for the question, Jupiter. Basically, this is like essentially the token question that everybody's getting in every podcast. So I definitely wanted to ask you, Sandra, what are your thoughts on AI essentially replacing us as practitioners?
So at least right now, I don't think AI will be completely replacing any cybersecurity roles. I do think that it can provide a lot of benefits, and like especially in terms of like automation. For example, just like going through SIEM alerts, like there could be hundreds that you're getting on a regular basis. And if I could have AI help me sort through them and like actually find, and maybe we do like a monthly audit to like go through them and make sure that it's doing a good job. But like if I could have AI do that for me, that would save me so much time as an analyst than going through those myself. And that would make my life easier to work on other more technical projects that only a human, at least right now. I don't want to say, 20, 30 years, maybe we'll all be replaced, but I do think, at least for right now, like that could save me time and then actually work on more technical stuff that does require a human, like someone to like analytically think about solving problems. And that overall will still get you a better boost in your career than spending all of your time in an SIEM doing something that AI could to probably do. So I do think that there's benefits, but I also can see, the side of things where people are afraid that AI is going to take over their jobs. So I can kind of see both sides, but again, I'm kind of an optimist when it comes to this. So I obviously don't want to give too hard of an opinion. And yeah, so I do think that eventually technology may advance to a point where it takes over certain roles in cybersecurity, but I don't think that, like, imagine having a tech company where they don't have a cybersecurity team and it's just AI doing everything. Like, first of all, who's auditing that? Like, who's making sure that it's doing the right things, and who's making, like, there needs to be at least like cybersecurity SMEs to make sure that it's looking for the right things, it's maintaining security. Like, who is? Yeah, I do think that's another reason why GRC and auditing is going to be an even bigger field. Yeah,
Let's
because
go.
there's gonna be such a need, especially with all these like AI tools that companies are adding on to their tools. And yeah, I just wonder where the data is coming from also, and like how it's being used and how it's being checked. So there's a lot of work there's a lot of jobs that's gonna come out just from that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And like, let's be real too. Like AI, it's trained on data that exists right now, and there's all
Right.
sorts of
Exactly.
biases, and there's all sorts of like funk in there, right? It's
Mhm.
not perfect. So if you're relying on something that's not perfect, that you can't like understand how it comes to its conclusions, managing your security,
Exactly.
that's a little much. So continuing with industry, Mr. Andrews here wants to know your thoughts on the current layoffs in tech. Right? There's been layoffs all over the place in
Mhm.
cyber, in tech, software startups, crashing and stuff like that. We saw the other day Cisco laid off like
Yeah.
5,000 or 8,000 people. Some other large companies have laid off. Do you have any, kind of wide range industry perspective or thoughts around what's going on with the tech layoffs?
Yeah, I do think that there's been a lot of tech layoffs ever since pandemic, honestly. But I don't think that it's impacted cybersecurity as much as other areas in tech. And based on what I've seen in the news, but obviously someone could prove me wrong in the comments if there's an article that says cybersecurity companies are just laying off staff. But um, even from my experience going through layoffs in my previous company, or like rounds of layoffs, this was before I left, but um, our cybersecurity team wasn't affected as much as, or compared to the overall organization. And how I think about this is the fact that even during a layoff, that doesn't stop hackers from trying to steal a company's data. And in fact, I would think that an even it makes them even bigger of the target if they were to lay off, like, half of their cybersecurity team, and then um, kind of put a target on their back, basically. I do think in terms of hiring, though, companies seem to be hiring for more senior roles than entry level roles nowadays. And even though there's like statistics about like hundreds of thousands of cybersecurity jobs, which or millions of cybersecurity jobs available, while that is true, I do think that a lot of the jobs are the ones that are more senior, or the ones that are more mid level. And I think that's a separate issue apart from the layoffs. I think cybersecurity in general has a hiring problem with the way that they require you to have experience, and without getting your first job to get in the door, even more so than other areas in tech. And they also expect you to have certifications, which you need. Certifications aren't cheap. They cost $100 to take an exam.
Mhm.
And the resources, the textbooks, the courses, they all cost hundreds to thousands of dollars. And I think that's the biggest hurdle to getting into cybersecurity, because even when you have all of those things, a company may still ask you for 3 to 5 years of experience for an entry level role, which I think sucks. And I think this is eventually companies are starting to realize that they can't find cybersecurity talent because they're not willing to give people a chance to hire them on for actual entry level roles. Like,
Mhm.
I've seen entry level roles that say 3 to 5 years of experience required, which is insane. So I think that's going to be a big change in the next few years, and also like less hefty requirements on like degrees and masters or whatever qualifications that companies are asking for that are just miles high.
Yeah, and like not directly related. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. I think Dr. Chase Cunningham, he was a guest a couple weeks ago. But I feel like cybersecurity, and I mean, yes, there is a place for higher ed and stuff, but for by and large, I feel like cybersecurity is by and large a kind of like a trade, right? So like
Mm.
you like a plumber or an electrician, right? Like in the United States, like it's kind of going away, but for a number of years, like trades were kind of like looked down on or like treated differently, but they're completely necessary and they're completely well-paying careers. And I feel like the way that those work, whether you're an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, whatever, a mason, like you go with zero experience and you show up and they give you the crappiest parts of the job and you work with someone who's been doing it for 10 years, 15 years, and they don't have to do the crappy part of the job and you get to learn the job and it's a trade. And then once you've done it for whatever, a year or two, then you go start your own mason company or plumbing company. And I just wish that our industry would take that approach a little bit more and introduce apprenticeships, right? I feel like it's so lazy an argument to be like, oh, like we have access to all the sensitive stuff, so there's no way we can give an intern that access. It's like, dude, 2024, we have like access controls pretty figured out. That's like the entire principle behind zero trust. Like we can give an intern some access and not worry about SolarWinds 1, 2, 3, right? So
Right.
I just wish personally, like, you know, I'm already hyper focused on making GRC socially acceptable. So I can't carry the flag for apprenticeships in cybersecurity. But for me, that's what we need to get to in order to, you know, get away from this 3 to 5 years of experience and get away from these ridiculous unicorn job recs for like an entry level role. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, there's definitely a disconnect.
Right. Exactly. No, I completely agree.
Yeah, sorry. I'll step down off my soapbox there and you know, like continue on. So a couple more questions coming in. There was one here that I really wanted to ask you about. So we talked about layoffs, right? So carrying on that, Roman actually wants to know, right? So like you have kind of multiple opportunities, revenue stream, but a lot of people, content creation is very difficult. It's hard to do well. You've been doing yours for 4 years. So like you've put in the time and energy already. But for someone who's just getting laid off, right? What might be your next move? And there's a lot of assumptions here. Like I'm maybe assuming, let's assume Roman works in cyber right now, maybe. But you know, I guess if your friend called you or your cousin called you, or you jumped on what is it? Mobnogi. What was that video game that you?
Mabinogi?
Yeah, Mabinogi. You jump on there and someone's in there and they're like, "Oh man, like I'm glad to be playing this game. It distracts me from I just got laid off." Like, what would be, you know, your recommendations or suggestions for next moves?
So, I guess firstly, I would question what my next steps would be in terms of where I want to work. Specifically, if I was working in cybersecurity and I got laid off, this is where I would consider that road fork in the road again, where I was like interested in cybersecurity and then also would consider going back to software engineering if I had to. This is where I would sit down with myself and consider, okay, so should I keep going in this career or should I just make a entire career switch and take this as like the universe's sign that maybe this career wasn't the right path for me, if I was no longer interested in it, of course. If you still are, then that different story. So I would firstly decide what I want to do with that. And then I know the job market is really hard right now. So I think that's the hardest part of things, because when you're also applying to jobs while also a bunch of thousands of other techies are also getting laid off, that just means there's just a lot of movement in the market, I guess, for like new people who are applying to jobs. Some people even down leveling, like if they were originally in senior roles, they're willing to take like a step down and also take in space, I guess, in these like medium or like and more entry level career roles. So I would consider that. And I think one thing I would also consider is to start some kind of freelancing work. So at the time before COVID, I used to do some freelance writing which is very different from my full-time job and content creation. I found this on, I think it was like a writing job board. I basically wrote tech articles for $100 per article. It wasn't like crazy money, but I would, but since that was just something I was just doing for fun. And I kind of considered it my side hustle because I didn't want to fully rely on my 9 to 5 income. And if I had gone through a layoff, that would probably be the thing I would be scared of the most, just relying on one piece of income. So I would highly recommend first brushing up on your resume, figuring out if your current career trajectory is what you want to do. And if not, try to find a way to upskill yourself, whether it be through courses or certifications or online resources. And then you can start to apply or fix up your resume and then start to apply for those jobs. But then at the same time, also work on some kind of side hustle. It doesn't have to be related to your full-time job, but it could be something you do separately that makes some sort of income so that even, I mean, it may not be livable income, but it's something that could help, just like a little bit on a monthly basis. And it may not pay like right away, but I do think that freelancing and doing some kind of contractor work, whether it's Upwork or Fiverr, those are very popular platforms. And then that would probably be my next steps for what I would do.
Oh, I love it. And it is a great idea. I really saw an interesting post the other day. There's a guy on Twitter named Justin Welsh who's I follow him. I really like his content. It's not cyber related, but he made this comment about how people think corporate jobs. They say, "Oh, I don't want to do my own thing because a corporate job is safe, right?" And I also used to feel that way. But he literally said, like, so you make $100,000 at a corporate job, like they have the ability with no notice to make you lose 100% of your income. Like you take your job and you got zero. If you have a couple different income streams, even if it's $100 here and $100 there, if you lose your job, like you haven't gone to zero. And I thought it was a really interesting observation, and one that kind of challenges the status quo of like, oh, get a corporate job. It's safe and easy. So yeah, I definitely hear. It sounded like a lot of your guidance was focused around maintaining not financial independence, but the financial stability to give yourself the time to look at the fork in the road. Unfortunately, I feel like when people get laid off, which is a very scary proposition, the first thing you want to do is like immediately get reemployed, like immediately, like without much thought into like, am I enjoying this career? Like, do I want to live in this state or country or whatever? But yeah, I wish we had more time, Sandra. There's a million great questions in chat, and also I did want to talk to you about your thoughts on return to office, but we are running low on time. So, Sandra, what kind of things do you have coming up that people who regularly follow your content, which I'm also subscribed to you, what can people expect from you? Like, what are you working on next that we can expect?
Yeah. So right now, the biggest thing is actually I'm currently working on a cybersecurity interview prep course. So that'll eventually be coming out soon. Don't have an exact date yet, but it's in the works. And I do think hopefully it'll be really helpful for people who are going into the job market.
Is there a landing page for it right now that I can pull up?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
That's how you know I'm pretty behind. Huh? But yeah, I'll share resources on my LinkedIn. I started recently posting on LinkedIn actually because of Jerry. He was the one who influenced me. So I started posting on there about a month and a half ago, and yeah, so all the updates will be on there.
So here's Sandra's LinkedIn. You can definitely get on that. And when she has this course that she's developing to help people, you'll be able to get updates there. We do have a super chat coming in from Nerman. Nerman's a regular, and I just dropped her LinkedIn. Nerman's a regular, and it's a super chat. So I do want to say thanks, Nerman.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
For the super chat, and direct the question to Sandra. Even though we're getting close to the end. So final question here. What are your thoughts about bug bounty programs and being self-employed?
Interesting. I think bug bounty programs can definitely be hard to start with as a beginner. These are typically going to be, they're most likely going to be a bit more high level. And if you're going to be, I guess it depends what you're looking for. So some people go into bug bounties as either a hobby or if you're trying to do it full time. And there are definitely people out there who live off of bug bounty programs and they make a lot of money just doing that, and they live and breathe, red teaming, hacking, and then the hobbyists are typically doing it for fun. And I think that's the biggest difference. So it depends on which area you're most interested in. If you're thinking of doing this, self-employed full-time bug bounty hunter, then I do think that that's amazing. You must be really, really good, and I'm definitely not good enough to be, with my 1 year of junior pen testing experience. I'm most likely not going to be finding bugs for a bug bounty, but I do think it's a great experience and also something really cool to add onto your resume if you do find a bug, and that is something really cool to talk about during cybersecurity interviews if you apply for junior pen testing roles. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door for a red teaming role if that's what you're interested in.
I love it. Thank you. And Nerman, definitely take that. I'm seeing all sorts of things. I'm now dropping these comments in chat. Sandra, a lot of people really saying great things about this interview, appreciating that you've come on here, shared all this great information. Jesse saying this is gold information. I know Jesse said earlier that he was taking notes. So on behalf of the whole Simply Cyber community, I want to say thank you so much for spending an hour with us and sharing all sorts of great insights and letting us learn a bit more about who Sandra Liu is too. It's been very eye-opening and very interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun, really.
Awesome. I love it. So let me just show one more time. This is Sandra's LinkedIn account. I'm going to drop a link in chat afterwards. This is Sandra's YouTube channel where she has tons of content on helping anyone with breaking into cybersecurity. You can see best certifications, highest paying jobs, all interviews with industry experts, etc. Very similar to what we're doing over here on Simply Cyber. And if you're on the gram, go ahead and connect with her with love.sandra. I'll drop links in chat as well during the outro video. But Sandra, thank you so very much. Chat, you guys have been great. The questions were amazing. Honestly, appreciate all the respect and engagement that you guys all do. We'll be back next week with John Hammond coming on chat, talking about that company him and InfoSec have just started. And obviously, John Hammond just did a ton of information with the Screen Connect vulnerability that's being wicked exploited right now. So we'll be sure to ask him about all that. Oh, that was a lot, Sandra. All right, everybody. Be well, and until next time, stay secure.
Thanks all. Bye.
Everybody, I hope you enjoyed that content. Keep the cybersecurity train going by connecting with the other Simply Cyber community resources. We have the Discord server that's lively and always keeps the conversation going. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And also every single weekday morning on the Simply Cyber channel, we're doing live daily cyber threat briefings, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as well as Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're doing live stream interviews with industry experts, and we produce videos that we push out every Wednesday morning. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you in the next one.